The plan involves Daniel's second wife, who lives next door. The idea is to drive to the beach next day for a picnic, which brings back memories of beach fiascos of long ago. Do you remember what used to happen? Asked Daniel 3. I'd do exactly the same today, says the old man. I'd stay in the car, guarding it, making sure no one leans on it in wet bathing trunks and spoiling the paintwork. It wasn't just that, says Daniel 3. 2 or 3 years ago it happened. I've still got the evidence stashed away. I'll go and get it. The brush. You used to sweep our feet with it before we could get back in the car. I'd do the same again, says the old man, and I've got another brush in the car, so that makes 2. Daniel's first wife takes no part in the discussion. She's long since realized that the competition from 1 Chevrolet and 3 Daniels is too much. Sea, white sand beaches and coconut trees. Some things are the same throughout the Caribbean, whatever the political regime. On Sundays, everyone goes to the beach. Beach parties here are very mixed. White, mulatto and black Cubans mingle freely. Racial differences have not disappeared, but they're much less pronounced than in the other islands. Salt, sand, wet bathing trunks, and souvenir hunters are what Daniel hates most. The outing was, as usual for him, a misery to be endured. A little-known fact is that part of Cuba still belongs to the United States, the 45 square miles of the American military air base at Guantanamo Bay. The right to lease this land was granted after the War of Independence in 1902, and America has exercised its rights ever since. Nothing moves in what is America's oldest foothold on any foreign soil that isn't observed from a ring of watchtowers manned day and night that separates the rest of Cuba from Guantanamo. Even more incredible are the 35 commuters who live in Cuba and work on the base. These are all that's left of the hundreds who were employed on Guantanamo before the revolution. Every day for the last 30 years, they've followed the same routine. They go in one at a time. They're stripped naked and searched by the Cuban army. The other commuters wait their turn while their colleagues change into a different set of clothes and emerge from the back of the hut with a US pass in the shirt pocket. He's now free to walk the kilometer through no man's land to his American employers. As each commuter leaves, his place is taken by the next one. Commuters will have to pass through the largest minefield in the Western world. It must be the strangest way on earth to get to work. This is the first time any outsider has been permitted to observe it. The commuters work in the stores, hospitals, and kitchens. They're paid fortnightly, about $500. On payday, the Cuban government marches them off to the bank, takes the dollars, and gives them pesos in exchange on a one-to-one basis. They keep 10% of their wages for incidental expenses on the base. Nearly 7,000 American servicemen and their families live here, and their only way out is the way they came in, by plane to the States.
Well, we certainly are isolated, and in some ways we might as well be in Africa as in Cuba, because there is basically no intercourse across that fence. We don't talk across it, we don't send messages, we don't read newspapers or hear news reports of what's really going on there. So we're in a foreign country, but it might as well not be Cuba in a lot of ways.
In fact, Guantanamo could just as well be a small town in Florida. In their claustrophobic enclave, the military has ensured that all the home comforts are here, towed in across the Caribbean Sea in vast container barges that come from Florida. The blockade prevents anything from being exported from the U.S. to the rest of Cuba. Only a short walk separates these two worlds. Of course, it was partly the lack of consumer goods which caused Eastern Europe to unravel. And one can't help wondering how long Cubans will put up with the rationed austerity of their own supermarkets, compared with these well-stocked, overflowing shelves. But only the commuters ever get the chance to make the comparison. Granville Duffus works in stock control. He's been a Cuban commuter for 4 years. When the revolution came, his brother Pat stayed in Guantanamo. And today the two brothers, one living in Cuba, the other on the base, never communicate in public.
I don't talk to him. I will call him on the phone and things like this, but I don't want the other commuters see me talking with him. They will get the impression that he's bringing news over to me. So I don't want to hamper his position.
Are you happy with the situation?
If I'm happy? Oh, yes, I'm happy like a lark. I'm a U.S. citizen now. I got my citizenship, and over here, they treat me very nice. Not only me, all the Cubans are treated nice over here.
Would you ever go back?
Never. If they even free Cuba, I wouldn't go back. I would.
Guantanamo is America's sole possession in a communist country. The U.S. considers it vital strategically. They pay a mere $4,085 in rent a year into a bank account where it remains. Fidel Castro refuses to touch it. The lease on Guantanamo expires in the year 2002, but since any change in its status has to be mutually agreed, America believes it can stay here indefinitely. So will Castro lose patience and kick the U.S. out? Or does America see Guantanamo as the token of its promise to return someday? At 4 in the afternoon, the commuters begin their complicated trek back to Cuba. By the time they've completed all the formalities, it'll be another 4 hours before this dwindling, aging group of men reaches home.
If I could conceptualize a wonderful thing to happen while I'm here, it would not be to fire a weapon across that fence, but it would be to see the gate coming open and to see what would go with that. Because, of course, it wouldn't come open with Castro, the communist, the international communist as we know him today. It would have to be a different sort of leader that would be able to do that.
There's been no U.S. embassy here since the Bay of Pigs fiasco, when American-backed Cuban exiles tried to invade the island. Instead, there's this place they call the American Interest Section. From there, America watches and listens in to Cuba, and Cuba watches it in return. Some messages Cuba takes no trouble to disguise. It's within earshot of this building that people are instructed to gather whenever Castro has a bone to pick with the Americans, which is fairly often. Relations between Cuba and America are often conducted like an elaborate game. Both sides play parts which owe more to ritual than reality. This time, the Americans are accused of piracy. The U.S. Coast Guard, it's alleged, has opened fire on an innocent Cuban freighter. Such incidents are the bread and butter of Cuban-American relations, and harassing Cuba just for the sake of it is America's part in the ritual. Word has gone out to every shop and factory in Havana. Within 2 hours, the party has mobilized a huge crowd to jeer at the Americans. That's Cuba's part. Meanwhile, at Jose Marti Airport, a different move in the game. 6 nights a week, unidentified and unannounced, a flight full of old people who have visas to leave Cuba for 20 days takes off for Miami. Pedro and his wife, Esperanza, have never seen their granddaughter. They've never left Cuba, and they've never flown. Tonight, they'll do all 3. This flight is a bizarre link which has grown up in the cracks and crevices of the wall of hostility between the 2 countries. At $750 a head, paid by the relatives in Miami, it's also a useful earner of foreign currency. Meanwhile, feeling at the demonstration is growing. Hastily flown back from their freighter, the heroic Cuban seamen make their entrance, carrying the ensign of their ship. These staged rehearsals of enmity keep Cuban patriotic fervor high and confirm its sense of an imperialist Goliath to the north, threatening an embattled Third World David. Those Cubans who don't idolize this man do at least respect him. Communism may be increasingly unpopular in Cuba, but it would be foolish for America to believe that only brute force keeps Fidel Castro in power. To some Cubans, he's the one who brought decades of shame to an end. And since self-respect and autonomy is what all Caribbean islands want, the Cuban model will continue to have its attractions. In that uniform, he's still the hero of the revolution, the one who stood up to Uncle Sam and lived to tell the tale. Back at the airport, an Eastern Airlines jet has landed discreetly. In an underlit and remote corner, it waits to take off on the short hop back to Miami. Some people on the flight have waited 20 or 30 years to see their family or friends. Soon they'll get a glimpse of another world, cut off for so long by the rigidities of the Cold War. America may have become Castro's best support as well as his worst enemy. Its intransigence keeps him in place. It helps to delay the progress of evolutionary change.
Compañeras y compañeros.
El tiempo en la ciudad de Miami muestra cielos parcialmente nublados con una temperatura de...
Of course, in the end, Cuba's ability to decide its own future may be overwhelmed by the magnetic force which Miami now exerts over the whole Caribbean.
Tienen una excelente vista de las luces de la ciudad de Miami. Nuevamente deseamos agradecerles el haber escogido a Eastern.
But as the symbol of the resistance to America, Fidel's act is magnetic too. Watch it while it lasts. So far, there's no one like him to follow.
Frente a la arrogancia yanqui, el desprecio de un comunista, así tiene que ser nuestro partido y así tienen que ser cada uno de los militantes de nuestra juventud. Y así son, así son. Una golondrina no hace verano. Con este el espíritu de nuestra juventud comunista, de nuestros obreros. Y yo le dije cuando me mandaron el ultimátum, y aquí se emplearon algunas palabras gordas. Es que ustedes van a estar de acuerdo, pero quizás, miren, tengan presente que hay muchas familias a lo largo del país oyendo la televisión. Bueno, la palabra gorda es la mejor que tiene el diccionario. En el diccionario no hay mejor palabra que una palabra gorda. Bueno, si acaso.
Cubans like these are caught between conflicting emotions, family ties that override ideology, and loyalty to the revolution.
Si de algo podemos estar seguros es de que jamás el águila rapaz que simboliza el imperio volverá a colocarse. Socialismo o muerte, patria o muerte, venceremos.
Tranquila, oye, tranquila. Bien, ya tranquila,
Vamos, cariño, vamos. Oye, te conocí enseguida, mi hermano.
Sometimes Fidel and Uncle Sam remind me of two dinosaurs locked in a titanic struggle to the death. Meanwhile, all around them, the ice age is melting. The environment which produced them and kept them going is slowly melting away.